see what this little sign says. Keep out of planted areas. Okay. Boy, those are some beautiful planted areas. This was all snowy a couple months ago. It's so green here in the summertime. Yes, indeed. And the sunlight filtering through the trees is one of my favorite things in the world. Anyhow, we learn a lot about God by looking at the way that Christ interacted with people here on earth. And one thing you see happening a lot in Christ's ministry is he asks a lot of questions. He asks a lot of powerful questions. And these aren't questions that he genuinely needs to know the answer to. The questions are more to help the people who he's asking process through something or understand something or learn something. For example, in Luke 9:20, Christ says, "But who do you say that I am?" He says this to Peter. He needs a confession of faith out of Peter. He needs Peter to confess with his own mouth, "You are the Christ, you are the Son of God." So he asks him, "Who do you say that I am?" Another time in the Gospel of John, chapter 1, verse 38, Christ says, he says, "What do you seek?" And he says this to the disciples of John. Now, John's disciples came to Christ to see, is this Jesus really the Son of God? And so when they came to him, Christ asked, "What do you seek? What are you looking for? What are you trying to find out?" Do you think Christ knew what they were seeking? Yeah, I think he did too. But he still asks them the question because it's necessary for them to think about the question, process it, and give an answer. In Luke 18:41, Christ comes across a blind man on the side of the road, and he asks this man, "What do you want me to do for you?" Well, as if it wasn't obvious, Christ was known as a great teacher and healer. Of course the man wanted to be healed so that he could see. But he asked him, "What do you want me to do for you?" Because he wanted this blind man to say, "I have faith that you can heal me." Another time in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 24, verse 17, Christ comes across these two men who are walking on the road to Emmaus, and this is an amazing conversation that he has with them. But to open it up, he kind of walks up beside him and asks, "What are you talking about? What is it that you're discussing so intently as you walk along?" As if Christ didn't know. I think he knew. But he used that question to open up a conversation that changed the lives of these two men and really changed the course of the early church. The religious leaders of the day were often trying to catch Christ, to tangle him in his own words or to stump him with some kind of theological question. Remember the time they asked him, is it lawful to pay taxes? And he asked them to show him a coin. Whose picture's on it? Whose inscription is on it? And that's the spot where he says, "Render to Caesar what is Caesar's, render to God what is God's." You can find that story in Luke chapter 20, verse 24. Another spot in Luke chapter 6, verse 9, Christ healed a man on the Sabbath. And they confronted him with this. And he said, "I ask you, is it lawful on the Sabbath to do good or to do harm, to save life or to destroy it?" See, Christ didn't just want to show these people who were trying to trap him or who had genuine theological questions for him. He didn't want to just show them to be fools or to just answer their question and walk away or to just demonstrate his might and disappear. What he wanted was for them to think it through. In processing these questions, the people who interacted with Christ were forced to learn more about him, were forced to learn more about God. So looking at Christ and how he interacted with people, we can see that God's real desire for us is to get to know him more. When we stop and look at the ways that God, right now, is trying to engage us in conversation in our lives, we can learn so much more about him, about his will, and about the direction he wants us to go. So many people just want answers from God. God, why this? Why that? When really what he wants is not just to spit out answers to us, but to engage us in a meaningful, lifelong conversation. It's God who asks the questions. It's God who guides the conversation. And when we realize that, it draws us into so much closer communion with him.